Welcome to the web class sponsored by Insurance WebX. I am Mary Beth Kosmeski, and today we are talking about creating powerful messaging to attract more clients. Now, I'm presenting this topic because really powerful messaging matters today more than ever before. I talk about this all the time in front of audiences and to our clients at Red Zone Marketing. But today I'm making a much more public presentation out into the open because I really strongly feel very powerfully about this for the future of the industry. Now, I'm not trying to be super over dramatic, but this is absolutely a make or break issue. So let me ask you, what's the most difficult thing that we have to do in business today? Well, don't say compliance, but it's really attracting new clients. And with all the scrutiny, the DOL regulations about being a fiduciary and having the best interest of the client in mind, there are so many obstacles to new business, to trust, and perceived need somehow can get lost. And whether or not you think the DOL regulations are really here to stay or they're going to go away, the fact remains, when it comes to a person's money, maybe all of their money, it matters. It matters what they know and what they think about you. And this has all been highlighted in the media and every place else. How well are you presenting your value and your fees? Is it undeniable? You see, most business comes from referrals, and our value and what people are saying about us actually really matters. So what we need to start thinking about doing is changing the conversation. When the mere fact that the government feels that it's necessary to regulate your ability to be in the client's best interest, we have not only perception issues, we have at the core value issues. And the conversation right now is what could be called an attack on our value. We need to change the conversation. So there's one thing that we can control, and that's how powerfully we talk about our own value. That's the message that needs to be heard now more than ever. Now, at my firm, Red Zone Marketing, we primarily work in the financial services industry. When we start an engagement, the first thing that I'll typically ask an advisor or a team or an agent is, what is unique about you? And the answer I often get back is, well, that's a tough question. Is it really that difficult? Well, it is. And it is because we're thinking about it all wrong, I believe. Our uniqueness is not in the products or services that we offer. We can't define ourselves by that. Everyone has, for the most part, the same types of products and services to be able to offer. Most advisors have access to the exact same lines. The service models can be different, and you might believe that yours is different, and it absolutely might be. We've got a different service model, a unique service model. The problem is it doesn't always feel that different to the client, especially at first glance. They expect you to offer incredible service. They expect you to care about them, to help them reach their goals. So how is that different or unique? Because if you don't know and can't clarify what is truly different, how do you expect your advocates, your clients, your alliances, and others to share the good news about what you share and what you do? And we've got to be able to say it and share it in ways that are incredibly eloquent today. So when we talk about value, what we're really talking about is price. Price is what you pay, and value is what you get. That's as Warren Buffett has said it. So what do your clients get? If the value is perceived to be significant relative to the price, then you can never be accused of not being in the client's best interest. So we need to think about, how do we look at this issue of price? And I like to call it the value equation. It's perceived benefits minus the price paid equals the perceived value. So what are the benefits? Have you clearly defined them? Does the client know the price? There has been some studies that have shared that the client, in a lot of cases, doesn't actually know how they're even paying you. So what would you say your perceived value is? I would think that many of you today would assume that the perceived value is high, and it should be. The amount of time, the intellectual capital you spend on your clients, the hand-holding, the service, the avoidance of mistakes, the education, super high value. But is that how they see it? So when you think about the perception of your value, you see, the biggest problem actually is that word perception. It's not that you don't provide it. I would assume that everybody on this call right now would say, yes, I provide incredible amounts of value. The question is, what is the perception of that? And the key is, if you want to increase your perceived value, you must have a powerful story that answers what is unique about you. Why you? Who are you? So let me give you a quick example. So there was an individual who wanted to sell a product. Now, this particular product was a yo-yo with the Amoco logo on it. So something randomly different than what we're talking about today. And he tried to sell this yo-yo for 25 cents. Then he decided, after he wasn't having a lot of luck selling this yo-yo with the Amoco logo on it for 25 cents, that he would share a story about the yo-yo, his story about this particular yo-yo, how he got it at the first job that he ever had, after his parents threatened to kick him out of the house if he didn't get a job. So he took this night shift job, and his yo-yo kept him company. He practiced it. He showed it off to girls, sometimes embarrassingly, but it was his prized yo-yo. 25 cents. But after telling this story that I just related, he sold it for $41 on eBay. $41 after he added a story. You see, the increase in value was 16,000%. 16,000. So when selling something, meaning matters. There is actually a website called significantobjects.com where it shares all sorts of stories of major price increases for products after a story is told. So I guess I'm just saying this to be able to share with you, your story is important, and to ask you the question, well, what is your story? The biggest mistake that we make in marketing is not that we don't spend enough time on our marketing, or we don't run enough seminars, or we don't spend enough money on our marketing, or hire enough people to help us in our marketing. The biggest mistake in marketing is that it's really about the words that you use. The biggest mistake in marketing is that we do not message ourselves properly to the other person. That's the mistake. And you might go, well, is that really a big mistake? It is the most critical mistake, and it is at the foundation of every reason that marketing does not work. If a seminar doesn't work, it might be because the invitation didn't have the right words on it. It might be if you get a lot of people in the room at your seminar, but then no one wants to schedule an appointment, was it because they were all the wrong people in the room, or was it the words that we were using? And I'll give you a case in point. Let's say you go to a business function and someone says, what do you do? And you say, well, I'm a financial advisor. Does that make them want to speak with you more or less? And I would suggest that it is unfortunately less, and it's unfortunately less all of the time. And think about the logic of this. You're going to the business function to attract people to you, and the only thing you're doing by the power of your own voice is repelling them from you. We have a messaging problem, and it is not your fault, but it is the biggest mistake that we make in marketing and in the acquisition of new business is the words that we use to be compelling. What are the words that you and your firm are using to be compelling? I think that there's a few questions that we absolutely need to be able to answer. What do you do? Why you? And what does it cost? So those seem to be pretty easy questions. But today, more than ever, we have to be able to answer these with transparency, with confidence, and with a unified company story and message. And the answers aren't as they may seem. The answer to number one is not, I'm a financial advisor, period. That's not actually compelling. It's the opposite. And so how you compel people with your answers to these questions actually matters today and tomorrow. So I'd like to go through 4 absolutes of some strategies that we can use today, that you can take back to your businesses and use this afternoon for attracting more new business. The first one is exploiting your uniqueness. Now, if you think about exploiting your uniqueness, you say, well, I don't want to exploit anybody, but I'm not actually saying to exploit other people or exploit your clients for sure. I'm saying to exploit your own uniqueness. And one of the things that we see is that most financial advisors, or many financial advisors, might present themselves as someone who is better, not necessarily someone who is different. And, I give you the example. If somebody says, well, why should I do business with you as opposed to the firm across the street? And you say, well, we're better. And you might not actually use that word, but you're going to say our service is better, our products are better, our solutions are better, we care more, all of those things, but they're just betters. And the problem with even insinuating that you will be better is that nobody believes it. If somebody says, well, it's going to be new and improved, you go, oh, finally, this is great. No, you believe that it's actually not going to be the way that that person says. Better is not a case for you. Different is. But the problem with making a case for different is, I don't know how you were raised, but I was raised not to be different, do not stand out, try to do everything exactly the way that you should, professional, and do everything just exactly right. And the problem with that, and I'm not talking about going against compliance, but I am talking about when you do everything just exactly as people expected, you are a gray suit against a gray wall and nobody can see you and they can't find you and they actually need you. What we have to figure out are what are our differences and how can we present these. One of the case studies that I did for a book I wrote called And the Clients Went Wild, we looked at a chain of gas stations in Texas. Now, the reason we looked at gas stations in Texas was, well, gas stations in particular, is because they're a commodity. And my feeling was, if someone can present a commodity as being so different, we can probably, as financial advisors and insurance agents, be able to do the same thing. We just have to think about it a little bit differently. And so this chain of gas stations is called Buc-ee's. And I asked the CEO of Buc-ee's, why do you have a cult following around a gas station? And by the way, this is an absolutely incredible gas station, if you can call a gas station incredible. This one is. It is absolutely incredible. And the CEO said, well, a few years ago, we asked our customers what they liked least about gas stations. And guess what they found out? Well, it wasn't the price of gasoline, and it wasn't the location, and it wasn't the cleanliness of the gas. Everybody talks about having clean gas and things like that. It was actually the restrooms. We just wish you'd have clean restrooms. And overwhelmingly, that's what they heard. So what did they do? They decided to clean up their restrooms, and they renovated all of the locations they had across the state of Texas and put in these wonderful, huge restrooms that were incredible. And the first time I went to a Buc-ee's, I remember walking through the location to get to the back of the Buc-ee's. I opened the door to the Buc-ee's restroom, and I take one step in and I stop cold because in front of me I see couches and a fireplace and women sitting around reading. And I'm thinking to myself, what door did I just open? Because you see, it's more like the Twilight Zone for those of you that are a little bit older. Crazy. What is going on? Women don't sit around and read in the restroom. We hold our breath, we breathe out of our mouths, but we certainly don't do that. And I finally started to get, oh my gosh, this is why people just love going there. And the CEO of Buc-ee's said, we knew we had something people wanted, but what we had to do was exploit our uniqueness. And so they started putting billboards up across the state of Texas that look like this. Only 262 miles to Buc-ee's, you can hold it. Now, if you imagine driving along the long roads of Texas and you run into, you're looking up and you see this billboard and you say, what is that? And then you get it. Because you see, what this is actually telling you is this is what you want. This is not what you need. This is what you want. The problem in a lot of marketing and financial services is that we market what people actually need. You need financial planning, you need this, you need that, but they don't want it. And if they don't want it, they're not going to be clamoring for it. And it's not really as compelling. And so when we think about this, it's kind of difficult. I mean, if you think about, well, let's say that you do financial planning and you say to somebody, let's say you say it to me, Mary Beth, you really need to get a financial plan done. And I say, yeah, I know. But at the core, I really don't want to do it. I know I need to do it, but I don't really want to do it because it requires me to go back to my house, dig up all paperwork and old statements and policies and all sorts of things to bring it into this financial advisor that I barely know and that I'm not even sure I want to do business with, or I will then share all of the mistakes I've ever made in my financial life, which I don't care how wealthy you are, you've made a ton of mistakes. And then if everything goes great, I've got to go back to my other financial advisor and tell him that he's out and that I have a new financial advisor. Now, what about that do I actually want? Not a single thing. I need it. I just don't want it. And so think about, what do people really want? What do they actually want? And I'll give you an example. They want to have an advisor that really cares about their money and acts like it was their own. Not everyone has to do this, but it's not that you care about them, because that's like saying, I take my car to the dealership to get serviced. They're so nice, and they care about me. They give me a cup of coffee, they give me a donut, but my car doesn't really ever work any better after I take it in, but at least they care about me. So you see the disconnect. What they want is someone to trust and care about their money like it was their own. Somebody who treats their money as important money, critical money, the result of a person's life's work. They want someone who will listen as if the money was under their stewardship and is like their own money. So in this one particular example, the message is very much different than we help you reach your goals, or we help you do whatever it is that you might say, as opposed to what they actually might want. So here's the question. What is unique about you? It isn't the products or services in many cases. The only thing that is actually truly, without exception, unique is you. It's you and the people on your team. So how do you describe that so it gets attention? Because I believe the best way to answer why you is to share why you are in this business. And if I were to suggest that every single person in this web class, there is one thing that's unique about you, and it happens to be you. And so if that's really the case, and by the way, the statistics are that 80% of the reason that someone decides to do business with you is because of you. It's not because of the name on the door, that's part of it. It's not because of the products or services that you sell, it's part of it, but it's 80% of it is you. And I'm not suggesting that we have to spend 80% of our time talking about ourselves, but I do believe that it is time to figure out how we can share more about us. And I believe that there's one way we can do this, and this is by answering the question that I just alluded to: why you? And I would do that by answering this particular question in the first paragraph of your bio, in the first paragraph of the summary section of your LinkedIn profile. Why are you in this business? And for those of you that have been in this business for more than 5 minutes, why are you still in this business? It's a difficult business to be in. It's very difficult, and it doesn't seem to be getting any easier. Why? What is the meaning behind this business to you? That's more about you that I think we need to share. And a lot of times we'll start our LinkedIn profile talking in the summary section, talking about, well, all sorts of things related to what we do. I'm a financial advisor. I work at this company. I do this, and you laundry list the stuff that you do. And that's great. But as soon as you say you're a financial advisor, they get the picture of what it is that you do. They may not have it right, but they're probably not going to change their opinion in that moment. What they might change their opinion about is you. Who is this person? And who is this person is not answered by, we do financial planning and investment management. So what's unique about you? Now, the second absolute is your compelling story. How do you take the uniqueness that you might have and wrap a story around it? And I don't really mean being braggadocious or egotistical, but giving yourself the right to tell your story. What is your story? And I can share this with you. For me, I started in this business working with a financial advisor who wasn't particularly very successful when I started with him. My marketing firm had never worked with a financial advisor before, and he was literally one of our very first clients in my marketing consulting firm. I told him I could help him with his marketing. He didn't actually believe me and asked me if he could pay me on performance. Well, paying on performance required me to get licensed because sharing commissions, and so I had to get with my Series 6 and 63 and 65 and life accident health. And it might be naive on my part, but it wasn't like I had a million clients. I needed this one, so we started to market his business. We found two very distinct niches to literally go after, which we did. And this advisor went from 10 million in money under management to more than 200 million in under 5 years. It was a journey, but it was a journey that taught me my first lessons in education about how to market a financial services firm. You have to find a path, and that path gives you a story. We work with individuals retiring from XYZ company, Or we helped 60 people so far successfully enter into retirement. Or we help people make the best choices for them within their complex benefit structure. Or we help them protect their money so it lasts throughout their retirement without question. In other words, the path is we understand you, and we've proven with others that we care about your money and we care about you. The compelling story is not that we work with everyone and we can work with you. That's actually not compelling. I could pull up 10 advisor websites right now and see the value proposition that says we work with individuals and families and businesses, helping them with financial planning and investment management. Now, that's true and it sounds good, right? It's just not very compelling, because if I'm an entrepreneur, the only thing I want to know is, do you work with entrepreneurs? Have you ever worked with somebody like me? I don't care that you can work with everyone. And in fact, I don't actually believe you could work with everyone. I mean, I personally do. But if I was your prospect, I probably wouldn't believe that you can work with everyone in the entire world. The one thing I want to know is, do you have any expertise in a situation that happens to be like mine? Now, what we do in financial services is we oftentimes talk in features. We typically market ourselves by talking in features, not benefits. I'll give you a case in point. Somebody says, why should I work with you as opposed to the firm across the street? And I say, well, I've been in this business for 20 years. Is that a feature or is that a benefit? Well, the reality is that that is a feature, because a feature is a statement about the distinctive characteristics of a product or service. I've been in this business for 20 years is a feature. But here's the problem. You say, well, of course, people know if I've been in this business for 20 years, I must be pretty successful. But that's actually not true, because the average attention span in the United States is 8 seconds. And that means that if they're actually listening to when you said the feature, they may or may not still be listening or thinking or tracking with you, thinking about what that benefit is. But in reality, what if they're thinking about a different benefit that you never even thought of? What if you think 20 years, maybe she's too old? Maybe she doesn't know how to use the computer. Maybe she's getting ready to retire. I mean, think about it. You don't know and can't control the conclusion that they're coming to when you simply give them the feature, which is not compelling at all. What we need to be able to give people are the benefits. The benefit is the value. The benefit answers the question, why should I, as the person who's listening to you, care about what you're saying? Why should I care? And I think if you're thinking about, well, why should that person care? The answer has to be something that you've given to them. And there's a way that we can do this without being braggadocious or saying, hey, I'm really great at what I do. There's a way that we can say this very naturally. And it starts with this. You say, well, somebody says, why should I do business with you as opposed to the firm across the street? And I say, well, I've been in this business for 20 years. And then you look at them and then you say this connector statement. And let me tell you why I think that might be important to you. Or I've got my CFP. Nobody knows what that is. Nobody cares what that is. I mean, they do some advertising and all of that. But what if you actually told them what that was? Well, I've got my CFP. Let me tell you why I think that might be important to you. And then you tell them the continuing education and the work you had to do to get that certification and how you use that with your clients. And now you're having a little bit longer conversation, but you're having a conversation that might actually win. And what I believe that financial advisors and most people who are in business need is some kind of a simple, repeatable statement of value. We think about the old elevator statement, right? Well, the old elevator statement doesn't necessarily work because it's kind of gimmicky and people think, well, an elevator statement, that's what we really need. We need to really compel somebody in the beginning. Well, I have a client that when I first started working with him, he said, well, my elevator speech is, we help create millionaires. And I said, well, that's great, but if the CEO of the biggest corporation in your town came up and asked you what you do, would you say that? And he said, well, no, of course I wouldn't say it then. Well, you're only using it in front of your bad prospects then? I don't understand. And so when you think about why elevator statements don't work, sometimes because of what they're supposed to be, they become not very useful. And so what we want to have is a simple, repeatable statement of value. I call it an SRSV. It's not gimmicky. It is something that absolutely can help you describe yourself in that very first meeting. So if somebody says, who are you? Or what do you do? or asks you that question at the networking event? Well, the answer that you're going to give them, if you don't think about it, is I'm a financial advisor, period. And we talked about that earlier. What happens when you say that? They don't want to talk with you anymore. They think you're going to try to sell them something. But what if you said, well, I'm a financial advisor at XYZ company. We specialize in working with corporate executives getting ready to retire from Abbott Labs. And that's an actual SRSV from a financial advisor. And you say, well, that's kind of specific. Like, why would she say that? I mean, why would she say that in front of someone who may not actually work at Abbott? Well, the deal is that she wants to be put in that particular box. That box is something that says something different than I'm a financial advisor. And by the way, what's the only thing that's memorable about that entire SRSV statement that she said? It's Abbott Labs. It's not we do blah, 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 blah. It's we do blah, 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 blah with people at Abbott Labs. Oh, I get it. You work with bigwigs at Abbott. And so if you think about how you might use the words that you're sharing about yourself, there are some really key important things. And the most important thing is who you work with. And so you say, well, how do I know who I'm going to be speaking with? Well, if you're at a business function, there's going to be business professionals there or business owners there or something like that. And what if you said, I'm a financial advisor. We work at XYZ. I work at XYZ company. We specialize in working with business owners. In fact, to date, we've helped more than 60 business owners successfully sell and get out of their business and retire. Now, if you're a business owner, you might think, wow, well, maybe I should be talking to you. And that's exactly the point. And I think that we need to have a pocket full of simple, repeatable statements of value, things where you can answer these questions very simply to whomever you're speaking to. So if you're talking to a teacher and you've worked with teachers before, then draw on that experience. And if you're talking to a corporate executive, draw on that experience and give them, we work with people like you and we do a little bit of this. And that's all you really need to do to get their attention in that first part. By the way, if any of you are working on maybe thinking about working on what you might call an elevator statement or a simple repeatable statement of value, something to be compelling right off the bat, which is, first impressions are everything, and that might be it. So if you're working on that, email me, info@redzonemarketing.com. I will take a look at that and I will provide you feedback. No, I won't ask you to do business with me unless you want to, but I will give you feedback on what I think about your simple, repeatable statement of value. Somebody that doesn't work in your business, somebody that's used to doing messaging like this, and I'll give you some honest feedback. So the third absolute that we're talking about today is the fee conversation. And this is where the rubber meets the road. When we talked about earlier, the value perception, well, the fee conversation is really about what you charge. How can you create the actual perception of your value? Ultimately, the fee conversation is your value proposition. When we talked about the value equation, that's what we're talking about. Perceived benefits minus price equals your perceived value. That is what it is. If it's free, it's not necessarily so valuable, but it might be interesting. I was recently walking down a street in New York City at lunchtime. And I saw this sign and I literally stopped and backed up and took a picture of this sign. And while I was taking the picture, I glanced inside the restaurant where it was absolutely standing room only, packed, the bar is packed, all the seats are packed in the restaurant at lunch in New York City. And I'm not certainly sure that it's because of this sign, but I think the culture probably is comical. It's interesting. It has personality. It's interesting. We want to be interesting. And you obviously wouldn't use a bait and switch like this for your value proposition, but what is yours? Is it interesting? Could anyone actually remember it and share it with others? So here's a value proposition that works. In my work in the financial industry, I really have had the privilege of being able to research and design presentations on the topic of value propositions for firms like John Hancock Investments. Now, they have a very unique way and super powerful that they have uncovered really for presenting your fee and value. So I'm going to share with you how one of my clients, a financial advisor in Arizona, has taken this idea and used it to memorably define his value. And it is, by the way, the best referral acquisition strategy that I've ever seen. So here it is. So if somebody says, or you're sitting down with somebody, and now you're really talking about more of the nitty-gritty of the value that you're going to provide for the fee that you're going to charge, or just the value that you're going to provide. One of the things that we have found is that presenting it in an easy and memorable way and authentically is key. So he actually draws this out live in front of the client, draws the three circles, and he's doing this while he's speaking so that they can hear it, they can see it, and they can remember it more. It's visual, it's auditory, he's hitting them on several different things, and plus he's talking in threes. We remember things in threes. So this advisor shares this particular example of what he does with every prospect and every client every time he meets with them. Even if it's the 10th time he's met with a client over the course of their career together, that's what he does. So with the prospect, he says, let me tell you the three things that we do. And then he draws out the circles, right above the first circle. The first thing that we do is wealth planning. And he talks about how they do their planning and all of the things that they look at investments, but they don't look just at the money. They take a look at the estate planning. They take a look at the legacy planning. They take a look at the education planning for the grandkids. They take a look at everything. And while he's talking about this, he's writing about 5 words inside of that first circle. And he's really answering the question as he's talking through this, why you should care about this, why this might be important to you. And then he says, after he talks through the wealth planning and what they do in that area and how their process and all of that, he says, now the value of what we do under wealth planning is worth about 1% of your assets under care. And he writes the number 1 down at the bottom of the first circle. Then he says, now the second thing that we do is really investment management. And he starts talking about the things that they do under investment management, how they manage the managers, how they choose the funds, how they go through their process of developing the portfolio, asset allocation, diversification. And he's writing keywords in as he's talking while answering the question, why this might be important to you. He's assuming that they're asking that question. Then he says, now the value of what we do under investment management is worth about 1% of your assets under care. Then he says, now the third thing that we do, and it's really what we bring to the table, is a collective intelligence. It's our team. And he starts talking about the team. Now, talking about the team can sometimes be done like this. We have 250 years of combined experience. And I've asked people that before, like, what do you think that they believe when they hear that you've got 250 years of combined experience? Obviously, you've got a lot of experience, but it also sounds like you might be really old, like really super old. And so I don't know that it's having the right effect because, again, if we just give them the feature, they're not coming to the benefit. So this particular advisor goes through and talks about the people on his team. He talks about, we've got a CFA on our team. Let me tell you that only 1% of the population of financial advisors can even get a CFA. Let me tell you what that is and why we have a CFA in our team. The same for a CFP that they have on their team. And then he talks about himself. And if you're a one-man operation or one-woman operation, this also is something that you can do. Let me tell you the experience that I have. And one thing he says is, I've been in this business for 20 years. And in 20 years, I've seen 11 major downturns of the market. There's one thing that I specialize on our team, and that's protecting client assets. I've got a lot of experience doing that. And so then he talks through all about the team and how they work together on behalf of the client. And then he says, now what we do under collective intelligence is worth about 1% of your assets under care. And then he says, now our actual fee is not 3% as it might look. Our goal is always to charge far more, to bring far more in value than we're ever going to charge you in a fee. Our actual fee is about 1.2%. And he writes that at the very bottom. And then he asks the key question. He says, do you have any questions about our value? And guess what the answer is every single time? It's no. Because you've explained what it is that you do. And he says what this avoids is anyone calling him and saying, now, tell me what I'm paying that fee for again? Because he never talks about his value without equating it to a fee. Now, can you get some of these things cheaper at other places? Absolutely. But the more you tell them all the things about building up your value, the more you can build up exactly what it is that your value proposition is. It's not a one-liner. Your value proposition is not that you provide free financial planning. Your value proposition is what you charge for the incredible work that you do. And this requires, in some cases, sitting down and kind of figuring this out. Not only what is it that we do, but how am I going to explain this to a client by answering the questions. Now, let me tell you why this might be important to you. We do financial planning, big deal, until you tell me why and what the outcomes will be and how I will feel after getting that financial plan. And we tell that story. Now, when this particular advisor talks to a client about, or a prospect about this, he takes, 15 minutes maybe going through this example. And when he talks about it with a client, maybe he meets with a client 2 or 3 times a year, he still pulls this out every single time and he says, let me share with you and remind you of the 3 things that we do. And that, by the way, is why it is an incredible referral strategy. Because if the client can actually go, and by the way, we talked in the beginning, referrals are the way we bring in this business. If a client can go talk to somebody else, and instead of saying, well, you should go see my advisor, she's real smart, that may not get me to move $5 million, but if there's an explanation of the kinds of things that you do, and by the way, this may be what other advisors do, but you are presenting it in a way that's memorable, that clarifies your value, and that they can actually repeat to somebody else. So let's say that you do have a good team value proposition. Can your team actually tell that value proposition? And one of the things, as we find with growing firms and firms that are developing teams and bringing on younger advisors, is that we teach them all about the products and the services and our process and all of that, but the most critical part, because they won't make it in this business if they don't bring in new business, is to figure out how we can in such a compelling way, describe what it is that we do. And if they can describe those 3 circles, or however you might want to do it, it absolutely is memorable, and it helps, and it gives them a real leg up. So finally, the 4th absolute is to talk about how we can use your message. If you have an SRSV, a value proposition, a story of what you do, well, where do you use it? How do you use it? And how do you maximize exposure and effectiveness of your message? So I've laid out a few things here. There's many ways to use your business story. And by the way, I call it a red zone moment. The red zone, obviously the name of my company is Red Zone Marketing. We're all about what you do in the final 20 yards before you score. It's where everything good happens on the football field, and it's also where everything good happens in business and in financial services. It's not about sending out direct mail and hoping for the best. You're on the 1-yard line. This is about, we've got people in front of us, we've got clients, we've got people who know us, we've got people that can become our advocates. We need to tell our story better. And by the way, we've been hearing from more and more financial advisors that they're losing clients to some of the robos and other places where the fee is much cheaper. And the only reason they're losing that business is because they're not telling their story. Because if you understood the value of what you were getting from that particular advisor, you wouldn't leave and go someplace else. And that I honestly believe. So there's many ways to use your messaging. I think you've got to have your strategic business story, which is verbal, and your simple, repeatable statement of value, which could be verbal or could be written. It's that niche messaging. Have your niche messaging in a more deep way for targeting your individuals. What are the things, what do we really know about this? Not just, hey, we work with people at Abbott Labs, but what do we really know and what do we really do? And that, getting more in depth about that. Your bio, your value fee presentation, your website messaging, so critical. Your online reputation, that's the social media aspect of it, and even a capabilities deck. So let's talk about a few of these things and how you might use these in your business. So first, it's developing that story, developing that powerful messaging, and then it's using it everywhere. Not only does your team need to be able to present it, but it has to be in different places. So if you think about the fact, are people actually Googling you? Well, the reality is that 9 out of 10 people are Googling you, and if before they come in to meet with you, and if they have more than $1 million, it's 10 out of 10. It is all of everyone that will Google you. Why? Well, they're looking for you. They want to see what you're all about. They want to see if they're making a good decision to come in and see you. They want to confirm that they're looking in the right place. But actually, after you break it all down and you look at really why they're looking for you online, they're looking for a reason not to come in to see you. And I know that doesn't sound great, but it's not easy or fun, as we talked about before, maybe to change financial advisors and come in and divulge all these mistakes that you've made. It's kind of something that you wish you can put off. And the problem is when it's not urgent, is that they're looking for reasons to not come in and see you. We cannot give them those reasons. We just can't. We've got to have an online reputation plan, because today, where people will look for you first is not at some brochure. They might hear about you from a referral, but they're still going to check you out. So what do we have online? So let's talk about the website first. And by the way, I've got some free tools for if you have the capabilities to be able to manipulate your own website. I've got 10 really simple and inexpensive ideas that I will share as a something that I can give you after this class is over. But what is your website? What is your online reputation plan? It leads right to your website. And so if you start with your website, is it innovative? Is it progressive? Does it look like you're technologically advanced? Does it speak to your prospective client? Not to your current clients, to your prospective client. Is it conservative? Is it professional? Is it up to date? Does it speak to your particular target audience? And does it compel somebody to do something? So I've pulled a couple of websites here. We're not going to go through a ton of them, but it has to speak the language that your clients might be saying, or the things that they might be thinking. And so one of the things that we've been doing a lot of in website messaging is asking questions. Ask a question that the advisor, that the client or the prospect might actually be thinking of. And to sell, quote, sell the services that you provide around that. Or make a big statement. This is a website where they said, we changed everything. That's not a small statement. You are standing out, you are making a statement, and you are definitive. And this is a very attractive way also of marketing yourself. Being plain vanilla does not really attract anybody. And yes, you can get these things through compliance. You have to, of course, be within compliance structure, and every firm is different. But this is exactly what we have to start thinking about if we want to get people's attention. Now, as for social media, LinkedIn is the place that we find that most advisors are being located, and in fact, probably located before they find your website. Why? Because if I plug in your name, the LinkedIn profile, if you have one, is probably going to come up. And the LinkedIn profile is thought more like someone's resume as opposed to their promotion. And so if I'm looking to hire a financial advisor, am I going to look at their website, which is like the brochure or the interactive brochure in the case of today, or am I going to look at someone's resume? I think the resume it's more credible. And so people will look at your LinkedIn profile. And one of the things that I mentioned in the beginning about how do we describe how we are unique is by answering the question, why are you in this business? And if you answer the question, why are you in this business, it should go in the first paragraph of this LinkedIn summary section. And we have a financial advisor. I had asked him, why are you in this business? And he said, well, I'm in this business for the same reason today that I started in this business, and that's because when I was growing up, my father and my uncle were very, very successful and renowned physicians, surgeons, and they decided to take all of the family money and invest it into one steel stock in Pittsburgh, and we lost everything. And so I had to move from my house, my private school, all my friends. My parents got divorced. It was a disaster. And when I was a kid, we went from being rich and then we went to being poor. And I said to myself, I will always and definitely do something to help people that were in this, that might be in this particular situation like my family was in. Now, he didn't know that that was going to be a financial advisor, but that's exactly what it is. And so today he gets more calls from physicians than he did before he put this LinkedIn profile up. And the question is, my gosh, does this make him a better financial advisor for physicians? No, but it makes him authentic, and it tells that he knows something about physicians, and it gives a little personality and understanding about this guy. And that is so critical. It's absolutely so critical with financial advisors. I want to know you're smart, but I want to know who you are. Here's another one. We had a financial advisor that had this in her summary section of her LinkedIn profile. We manage the financial affairs of our clients and their families. Well, that's, it's not bad. It's really not saying anything much at all. And I said, well, what do you really want people to know? And she said, I want people to know that I care. I know I care more than people in my office, all my colleagues. I know I care more. And I said, well, it's kind of hard to say that you care more. It's one of those betters, and we can't really say that. But tell me about your background. And so she went through her background, and she said, she got out of college. She was a nurse. She had gotten her bachelor's degree in nursing. And I said, well, why doesn't it say anything about nursing in your bio, on your LinkedIn profile? She goes, well, nursing has nothing to do with being a financial advisor. I said, yes, but it has everything to do with caring. You can't be a nurse and not care. I said, so we've got to pull all this together. And so that's what I advise you to think about, is how we can weave some of these things together, how you can weave some of these things together in your own story and start telling it in a way that is more powerful. Now, for those of you that have been in this business for a while, you might say, listen, I've got a pretty big business, and I built this business by not doing what she's talking about. I mean, yeah, I can explain what we do and all of that, but I'm not really getting in depth about all of these things that she's talking about. And I would say that that's absolutely true. You didn't have to do it 10, 15, 20 years ago, but today in this ADD world where nobody is paying attention to anybody, and we've got this whole other thing that's going on where we need to change the conversation, not about how we're not good, but about how we're great. And that we are in the client's best interest. And so we have to be different about our messaging today than we were before. And another way that we can do this is through a capabilities deck. Now, for those of you that used to have a pitch book, pitch books have gone the way of the dinosaur, I think, but this is kind of along the same lines as a pitch deck or a pitch book, because a pitch book, what it actually did was to tell people why they should do business, and you're basically selling them. But a capabilities deck is the 2017 way of presenting your value. And I'll give you an example. Airbnb, when they decided to start off and get funding, they needed to get funding when they were just in their infancy. They put out a presentation, and one of the slides in the presentation had 3 slots to it. It was like, imagine 3 circles. And they said there's 3 things that we do. We help people save money, make money, and share culture. And they brought in millions and millions of dollars because they could explain something that was different. People don't get it. They didn't understand why anyone would want to do that. And next thing you know, they go, aha, because it was clearly presented. And so if you think about having a capabilities deck, this is something that would be an interactive presentation that you might sit through, and maybe it's 5 or 8 slides. And you have them on your iPad, or you have them on the screen, or you even print it out, and you walk through what our purpose is, what our differentiation is. Let me tell you about the solutions that we provide for a particular target market. Let me talk about our intellectual capital, our team, and let me share how we manage the outcomes. And if you have a presentation like this, that maybe, let's say this presentation has 6 slides, this is a pretty incredible presentation, or it could be, about what you do, how you help, what are the things that you are going to provide for the client. So success is really about executing on the red zone moments. Success in financial services and new business development is about execution on what is really important when it is really important. How are you describing your powerful story? Your story gives value. And by the way, it's your story. You can take it from somebody else, but ultimately, if it's going to be authentic, it has to be your story. Why you? Why are you in this business? Why is your team in this business with you? What is the ultimate purpose that you guys are there to deliver? And we need to have more and more and more of this. So here are the questions that we really need to answer, as I said in the beginning, more than ever, through transparency, with confidence, and with a unified company message. We have to be able to answer these questions everywhere, on your website, in person, in the office, on social media, through your team. What do you do? Why you? What does it cost? We have to change the conversation and begin to share what we do so there is undeniable value. Undeniable value. It is the way to attract business today, and it is no longer optional. So I mentioned before that I've got a few things that I'd like to give you. For those of you that sat in on this web class, I have something called a messaging worksheet, which helps with questions like the SRSV questions, the simple repeatable statement of value questions, that will help you walk through with your team. It just asks a bunch of questions and helps you walk through in a logical way how you can start to message you and your team better. If you're interested in that messaging worksheet, shoot me an email at info@redzonemarketing.com. The same with improving your website. We've got 10 simple and inexpensive ways to improve your website by changing the navigation and changing some of the pictures and doing things that are not going to cost you very much, and you can do it on your own. And I'll also for sure send out the presentation slides that we've just seen if you'd like to have those as well. And this call is being recorded, and so you can always go back onto the Insurance WebEx site and get a recording of this as well. So if you'd like us to help you with this, I'll just throw a few things out there very quickly. We do this all the time with your strategic business story, your compelling value proposition. And we charge $1,250 for doing this. Sometimes it takes about a couple weeks to get this done. Sometimes it's shorter and sometimes it's longer, depending on how this all works. But we've priced it this way so that it can be something that hopefully can be affordable if you need this help. By the way, you can do this yourself. You do not need to hire my firm to do this, but you can certainly do that if you'd like to. Now, level 2 is sort of like everything. It includes it's the most comprehensive. It's basically all the things, including writing and messaging for your strategic business story, your personalized bios for every member of the team. Why them? And we interview them, and we do our due diligence so that we can write this well. Value fee conversation, the 3 circles, or however you think you may want to do it. Complete website messaging. We'll go through and lay out your website with a website map so it's easily navigated. We can work with any template designers. You can work with one of our designers, or you can just have the writing done. Capabilities deck, which is something that is so powerful these days, and certainly a targeted approach to messaging for new business development for every single person as it relates to the niche market. And that's $7,000 to do all of that. Now, you may not need all of it. You may only want some of it, but that's what we do. Now, one of the most popular things we've been doing lately beyond the website messaging is the capabilities deck. And typically it's somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 to do a complete website messaging or to do a capabilities deck. Now, sometimes it's less and sometimes it's more depending on the complexity, but that's about the average right there. And it's something that, again, we do this very quickly with the graphics and everything, and every single thing that we do, it gets through compliance before we're off the clock. We're on the clock until you say great and compliance says great, and then we're done. And we certainly know how to write for compliance. So again, our contact information is, you can go to our website at redzonemarketing.com, or you can go to our email, info@redzonemarketing.com. And again, if you email info@redzonemarketing.com, we'll send you the slides, we'll send you the worksheets, we'll send you whatever you'd like. And if you're interested in scheduling an appointment to find out more, to see if this really might be a fit for you, then please reach out to info@redzonemarketing.com, or you can call 847-367-4066 and ask for Denise, and she can get you scheduled. I'll be doing a lot, and I do a lot of these kind of engagements, but we also have a team. So if you call sooner, you probably will get me, and if you call a little bit later, you might get one of our expert team members. But I oversee everything on this, as I have for years. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you being a part of this web class today, sponsored by Insurance WebEx.